Time for the fishing topic.
Oh, I love that.
We're
Water
going to
splash if it didn't come through.
talk.
Just so people know, I was reacting to the splash of water.
New production things.
I loved it. That was good.
Okay, so let's talk about lures. Let's talk about some lures here.
Let's do it.
We're gonna talk, like you said, high level lure, like almost lure anatomy, for lack of a better word, and then just kind of like get into them. I call it version 1. Like I think I'm gonna call this topic beginning lure something version 1. Guide to beginner lures version 1 or something like that.
Sure.
Because I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 5. And I'm thinking the 5 is a good number, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Because I think it'll make a good, 45, 60 minutes or whatever. But I just think that anything more than that, you start to get into not as much detail as we want to, or as I feel like we should.
Sure.
Because we're going to start even at the basics of like, we'll just start off with spoon, like something so basic like spoon. I want this to be, and if you're a seasoned fisher and you're listening to this and you're like, oh, this is fucking stupid, I'm going to turn it off. Well, share it with somebody who doesn't necessarily fish, right? Share it with your buddy over in accounting who's like fish curious, and have them listen to this so that way they can come join you and talk legitimately about it. There's so much terminology in any sport, like snowboarding was big for me. There was so much shit I realized I was speaking a different language. Right. When I was talking about snowboarding with snowboarding people, I was speaking a whole different language, and fishing's no different. And I need that refresher now. Now I know what a spoon is, and I know what some of these things that we have on the list. I know what they are, but even I fucked up one later where I had to have you bring the visual because I thought I had one. Turns out, nope, you had this instead, Josh. You were wrong. I'll point that out when we get there, but like it just was more to my point of like, we haven't done one of these beginner guides in a long time. Let's start it off let's kick one off by doing like a series. And I think this might be a series that we do kind of over the next year or so, or just as a real AF TV thing. So anyways, I said we were going to kick it off with spoons. I got a spoon. I got a little spoon. If you're on the podcast, we are going to be doing, like, if you just listen to the audio feed, we are doing visual aids on this one. I have this orange, hyper orange and hyper yellow spoon. And I put down all these descriptions. I'm like, it's kind of like a stretched out egg. And it's concave on one side and it's convex on the other. And then I just realized I was writing down all this stuff and went, it's just a spoon without a handle on it. Oh, you muted yourself, Tim.
Yes, I did. I apologize. I was grabbing some shit, moving some stuff around, and I was making a little bit of noise, and I forgot to unmute it. I think that's where it came from. I think that's probably what it started with.
Yeah.
Where somebody's like, I needed to move around, and they just like, got the idea of what if we poured this spoon and then just didn't pour the handle in and then put a hole on the one side and put a hook to it, because it just kind of flutters. It might even happen that somebody's sitting out there, eating their canned meats. They're just out in the boat bobber fishing, having some canned meats, and they slips and they watch it go flop, 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 all the way down, and they go, oh,
right,
that looked like a dying bait fish. I wonder if I tied that to a line and casted it in, seen what happened.
Yeah.
And then they learned that they could cover more water with a spoon, and they're just like, bingo, bango, yeah. And then they started doing that. And then I think it just kind of evolved from there. I think spoons are probably one of the first lures that came about
Yeah.
because it was easy to put just a hook on a piece of metal,
Right.
cast it out, reel it in, and it would just kind of create some flash.
Yeah, and now that you're saying that, I realize that I described the what I call the top part of the spoon. I said it was hyper yellow and hyper orange. It's got this stripe down the middle of it. Um, the
Yeah.
other side is just silver.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. So
Like
you got a little bit of color because as it's going through, it's going to have a little bit of that color, a little bit of that flash. You're going to have both sides and going. So, and they're different colors and stuff too. Like I got, mine, the one side, the one that I grabbed is silver on that side. On the other side, still pretty silver,
still
you
silver.
know,
Yeah.
kind of looks like a bait fish. So that's kind of giving you like a flash. Looks like
Yeah.
the
That one
bait
had an
fish.
eyeball on it. And oh, and
Yep.
also you said put a hole in it. Yeah. So
Yeah.
like if you think about it like an egg, the pointy top part,
Yeah.
that's got a hole in it. You put your line there, and at the
Yeah.
bottom, there's another hole that has
Yep.
a hook in it. Now mine just has a treble hook hanging off the bottom, just a
Right.
regular hook with 3 hooks on it.
Yep. Yep. Just
Seems
a
pretty
big
typical
treble.
for a spoon.
Yeah, so that's kind of like the originator. That's where they kind of came from. I think they were a little bit more football shaped when they first started out. I think they learned
Mhm.
that having it, bigger towards the back and pointed towards the front gives you a little bit more control with it. But I think
Oh, okay.
initially, it was more football shaped and it would just kind of roll. And now when you like let it go, it just kind of flutters and stuff, I think. But
Mhm.
there's quite a few different shapes actually. Like a spoon has evolved from a spoon like where it's a shape like a spoon where it's kind of, where you were saying the concave or convex.
Yeah.
It's I think technically both because it
It's
depends on
both,
what
yeah.
side of the spoon you're
R
looking at. So
Yeah, yeah, yep.
but now you got like ice fishing has so many different kinds of spoons. Like
Whoa.
there's smaller Castmaster ones that a
So
lot of people use in the
explain a
summer.
regular like the
Well,
oh, okay, hold
that's
on.
technically a spoon where it's completely flat, no concave or convex. But when you turn it to its side, this is like the same shape as like a Castmaster one that people use in the summer and stuff. This one's made
Whoa.
by Northland.
Yeah.
I don't know. But this one has the treble hook
And
like
it's tiny
normal.
like an ice fishing like, you could tell it's an
And
ice
this,
fishing because it's super
yeah.
small. I mean, it's
And
like
this one has like an extra little flange. It kind of looks just a little piece of metal on the bottom. It looks kind of like a tail, so it can give some more shimmer and shine when you're kind of bouncing it up
and
and
is the
down.
hook in there too?
The hook is right behind it. Yeah, if I flip it over, you might be
Yeah,
able to see
yeah,
the
yep,
backside's white, and then you
yep.
can see that treble.
You can see it. So, yeah,
Yeah,
it still has its tip, and then it
yeah,
has down at a tail, and it has another treble
yeah.
hook on it, kind of like
So
a
then,
traditional spoon.
yeah, I don't know if you can see that one that well. Maybe
That
I'll
one's
try
pretty hard to
this.
see, but hey,
I got
put it up.
two here. Maybe this one will show a little bit better the color. Um, I don't know what the fuck is this. Some
Is
piece
this
of
an ice
paper.
fishing one again? Or are these 2 that you just picked up, are they ice
Yeah,
fishing
no,
again?
these are ice fishing ones again too. But you can totally use this kind of stuff in the summer.
So
I don't know if
before we
I'll
go
hold it
into
up.
the ice fishing ones again.
I just found a random piece of paper.
Yeah, I
That's
see
kind of
it.
like an S shape.
Yeah.
It's like a little bit different. That one's made by Clam,
Okay.
and that one has two. The treble hook is hair.
Yeah.
There's a hook in there, and then it
There's
has
a
the
hook
hair.
in the
It's feathers.
treble hook in the hair
Yep,
hanging
it's
off the back.
feathers and like a little bit of tinsel. It looks like,
Sure.
but
So,
yeah. So there's a bunch of different types of spoons, shapes of spoons. But sorry, go ahead. What were
yeah,
you
I
saying?
guess so. But so ice the ice fishing, let me go back to the spoon I had, right? The initial
Yeah.
spoon that we were talking about, the one that big silver one that you pulled up.
Yes.
That's open water, you just throw it out and you start reeling it in, and the pointed end of the spoon comes towards you, the treble hook falls out the back,
Yes.
and you start reeling, and it's a cast and retrieve. Wouldn't
Yeah,
that
for the most part. Yeah, yeah. You can get a little bit more creative with it. There's different ways to do it, and when you retrieve it, it will kind of just like it'll kind of go like this, and it'll kind of like every once in a while like flip over once and come back and stuff. But you can pause too, and it'll kind of like flutter down like this, and
Okay.
sometimes it'll roll a little bit on the bottom. And if you reel it fast enough, you can actually get, if you keep your rod tip up and fast enough, this spoon can glide along the top of the water, and you
Whoa.
can kind of work it like a topwater bait.
No way.
Yeah, so there's some possibilities to work this, and I think people started putting that stuff together with a
Uh-huh.
spoon, and then they started being like, what if we made a lure specifically for that? And started, really putting stuff together. Well, what if we made something that floated for the top of
Oh,
the water, and we could pause it every once in a while
right.
instead of having to burn it on the top of the water so it doesn't sink,
Right.
you know?
Okay.
So yeah, you can, it'll essentially, because of its shape, where it is kind of like that cup, if you get it going, it's almost like a little boat,
Mhm.
it'll
Yeah.
sit right on the top of the
I can
water.
totally see how that would work, and I've done it with some smaller spoons as it got close to the dock. Because I for the first time ever, I've actually thrown a spoon here in the last few years with, being able to get out more COVID because you couldn't go anywhere uh, and getting more in deciding to start the podcast, right? We decided to
Sure.
start the podcast as a way to influence ourselves to get out on the water as much as we could. And
Sure.
I have thrown a spoon.
Hmm.
I've threw a spoon I really threw a spoon and started working and watching it not too long after we started the podcast. And the things you're saying, I didn't know. I thought it was supposed to spin in a circle like a tube. Um, like it was supposed to
Oh,
just roll on itself constantly 360
yeah.
and 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 go through the water. And so I thought I tied it on wrong. I thought maybe I was supposed to have a swivel on it. Like I couldn't fucking figure it out in my head. And I just
Yeah.
never brought it up to you or on the
Sure.
podcast before because I was like, I
Yeah.
don't know. And I just kept playing and working with it and it kept doing the same thing, which appeared to be random to me.
Yeah, basically. I mean, that randomness is kind of like what a dying fish does too. It's not the same thing over and over and over. So
Mm.
that erratic action a lot of times triggers a fish into biting. So
Uh-huh.
it does go, but having a swivel on it also is not a bad idea.
Okay.
I shouldn't even say not a bad idea. It's something you should do,
Oh.
because where it's spinning and stuff,
Uh-huh.
that creates line twists, and it can mess with your
Oh.
line. So you put that swivel on, it allows the lure to, twist and stuff without fucking up your line.
Yeah, it allows the spoon to do what a spoon is supposed to be doing, like you said, flop and wiggle
Right.
and be
Yep.
random in the water without fucking up your line.
Yeah.
It makes a
Yeah.
lot of sense.
So some of the spoons are shaped a little bit different to do different stuff,
Okay.
especially with like ice fishing.
Yeah,
There's some
yeah,
of them
back to
that are
that for
made.
sure, because that I
Yeah.
didn't even understand when you brought it up. I was
Yeah.
we've
There's some of
talked about
them.
it before, but I still can't wrap my head
Yeah.
around it.
Like that S shape style spoon that Clam makes. Meps has made one for a long time called a Cyclop.
Okay.
And that's, Meps is like the inline spinner. We'll get to those, but like Meps is known for making like inline spinners like this,
Yeah.
where we'll talk about that in like a little bit. But
Yeah, for sure.
um, they also make a spoon called a Cyclops, and it kind of looks like it has one eye, and it's kind of like an S-shaped spoon, and it's basically a spoon that works in a different manner. It almost does like that spinning you were talking about, but it spins a little bit different. It's almost like a tighter spin because
Oh,
it's not a big, it's like a thinner profile with that
okay.
S,
Sure.
and that S almost like lets it spin in the water faster. Like
Interesting.
I can't think of a good comp to what it would be like,
Yeah,
but
because it's like
it
its
has
own
less
thing.
resistance.
Yeah. It's just more hydrodynamic.
Yep, yep. So it spins and stuff.
So how does it work? Like, because we're talking about cast retrieve, right? Like that's what a spoon was built for, is built for. So
Yeah,
when you're just dropping it into the hole, how the hell
yeah.
does that work?
So that you're just kind of making it bounce, man. Like if this were
Oh.
for visual, like ice fishing and stuff, it's just
Uh-huh.
kind of there. You're just kind of like letting it bounce. Sometimes you can let it fall a little bit and flutter and stuff, but basically you're just kind of sitting it there. That's why that other one had that other piece of metal down here on the hook.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then, and when you have the feathers and stuff too, it's just bouncing there. And then in ice fishing, a lot of times they'll top it. Like they'll put like a minnow head on here or some
Minnow head on
wax
the
worms
treble
on the
hook.
hook. Yeah. And
Yeah.
just kind of bounce it around and stuff.
Okay.
But there's more than that too. Like, um, the spoons get into there's a couple different variations that are, the Johnson silver minnow has been around forever.
Okay.
And the Johnson silver minnow has a metal bar that goes up here and a single hook that comes off the inside of the spoon up, and that
Whoa.
metal bar goes to the hook so it makes it weedless.
Oh,
And then
I've
you
seen
can,
these.
so it only has the one hook on the top, so you're casting that out. And then yeah, that one
That one
works
is
well
hard to
for,
explain to the audio listener.
I know
Like the
it's
way
like
they
the,
did that, I was like, I kept trying to make that into words in my head, and I'm going, I've seen that,
yeah,
but I don't know how to put that into words. So
yeah.
sorry, audio.
Imagine
So
if imagine if you have your spoon, right? Like a legitimate spoon in your kitchen that's sitting in your silverware drawer.
mm-hmm.
So you have it, the concave side is up.
Mm-hmm.
So off the very front of the spoon, the tip, like where the cereal would go,
Yeah.
the that's where a little metal bar would come back and get rid of the handle of the spoon off the back part of the spoon where the cereal would go. The hook rises up off of that and curves towards the front to meet that metal
Yeah.
bar.
Perfect.
And
Yep.
that's what it is. And that metal bar is pretty flimsy. So when a fish bites it, it won't stop it. It's like stiff enough that it's made to deflect weeds, but flimsy enough that a fish's mouth will depress it so it can get the hook in its mouth still.
Yeah.
And
Nice.
then they have like Northland makes a jawbreaker that has like plastic versions of that same weed guard
Okay.
and the same sort of a hook setup where the hook is on that side, but then they add a skirt.
Oh.
There's a skirt. So that one dances a lot more back and forth, almost never rolls because the skirt, far less hydrodynamic,
Right. Kind of
doesn't
drags
allow it
back
to
there.
roll. Yeah, it just kind of, the front of it just does the dancing back and forth and the back kind of stays put a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And I'm
Man,
sure
it's
there's
so
other ones out there that I'm not naming, but those are just some
sure.
examples.
Yeah. Yeah. To go back to the hook quick before we move on to the next one. Um, like I said with mine, it's a treble hook. I think everything
Yeah.
you've showed is a treble hook too.
Yes.
There's all these different variations. Is it just standard? Put a treble on there?
Yeah, standard for a treble, except for those ones that I was talking about where you put that single hook on the inside of the spoon.
Right.
But it's
Except for that
always a
last one.
treble. It's
Yep.
always a treble hanging off the bottom. But I will modify it. I think that there's even a clip out there somewhere that we put out, where I was talking about the small ones for panfish, where
I think
I'll
yep.
replace the treble hook with a single hook and put like a little gulp minnow on there or whatever,
Yeah.
just tip it and then the fish will come and smoke that. So it's a little bit different because you can like that kind of spoon. I actually like jig off the bottom like it's a jig.
Oh,
I'll let it fall all the way to the bottom and rip it up off the bottom, and as it's fluttering back down is when they eat it.
okay. And jigs we're gonna get
Yeah,
into too. You're
yeah.
covering
And
a few
there's
things here.
jigging spoons too. Like
Okay.
there's, I mean, the jigging spoons are basically the ice fishing spoons that I showed you, but
Okay.
they have way bigger versions, and people will use those. Like you'll see, watch the Bassmaster classics and stuff. There
Okay.
will be guys that use the Castmaster like big versions for bass in the middle of the summer
Really? Okay.
out in
I'm
deeper
gonna
water,
watch for
just
that.
jigging it up and down.
Yeah.
Yeah, it works. There's times and places for a spoon for sure.
Yeah. Kick
Oh
ass.
man, sorry, I
Damn,
got some
that got way deeper
indigestion.
than I expected. Like my notes weren't that big, and all of a sudden here we are, like 20 minutes, like 20 minutes in on just
Yeah,
that.
that's why. Yeah, a little bit of inside baseball. I told Josh before we started, I was like, "This is probably going to need to be more than one episode."
Yeah, probably. So if we don't get to all 5 of them, then that's a real AFTV list. We went long in the beginning, so this is going to be a longer podcast for anybody who uh, is kind of new or you've been with us a while. Sometimes we just rant on. So whatever.
Right.
Okay, Tim, you have the doc. You already said inline spinner earlier,
Yep.
but I want to know, where do you want to go knowing that like we're already 20 minutes in on a spoon?
Yeah, dude. Let's talk about the spinners. Let's
Yeah.
do it.
Okay, because if I'm the way that you were talking about the spoon and you
Yeah.
said like, hey, I think a lot of things started with a spoon. Like if I were to, you basically said if I were to imply fishing history without having dove in and done the research, that spoon was probably one of the first things to happen.
Yeah.
And I look at a spinner and I go, there's spoons on a spinner.
Yeah.
So
Pretty much.
so it's crazy and a good transition, because we'll have to get into buzz baits because that was what I did. I thought I had a spinner. I thought I had bought a spinner, and on my on screen right now, I'm showing everybody. Like if you're on YouTube, this is a buzz bait.
Yep.
I thought I bought a
buzz bait.
spinner, and I went to get it for tonight, and
Yep.
I was like, oh shit,
Yep.
that's a buzz bait.
And a buzz bait is basically, I mean, it's the same idea as a spinner bait, but that buzz bait blade is made to move a lot of water, so that shit sits
Yeah.
right on the surface.
Right. Yeah.
And it creates a lot of chaos.
Yeah. And we can jump into that. I think we can just roll buzzbait, maybe even into spinnerbait. I don't want to say they're the same thing, but like, I think you're right. Like we should start with the spinnerbait because spinnerbait has spoons on it.
Right.
But it's not a spoon.
No. So
you go ahead. You go first.
I mean, these ones they consider these blades.
Oh.
So when you're talking about spinner baits and inline spinners and stuff, they always call those blades.
Okay.
But basically what they are is just like you said, is a spoon. And like this one on this spinner bait, I'll try to move my hand a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like a football shape.
It's totally,
but it's made
like one of those when you would buy a flick football.
Yeah. And this one is a KVD. This is a double willow. So this is a spinner bait. So it's like a V shape. These are also referred to as a safety pin.
Oh, dude, because the metal part of it looks like an open safety pin.
Yeah.
Oh shit.
Yep. Yeah, because
that's a great description.
Yeah.
The metal V. That's what I wrote down too.
Yeah. So it's a metal V or like an open safety pin. It even has like the point is probably kind of hard to see, but the point is kind of
the visual that you're showing is the point of the V. It looks like a hinge of a safety pin, even. Kind of.
And that's where the loop is. Some of them will have it closed. Some of them will have it open.
Really?
I prefer the closed, but a lot of them are open. I mean, I guess that's just a personal preference, but
sure.
I can't call the manufacturers and be like, "Can you close that, please?" I think they do have little rubber bands that you can get and put that on there if you don't want your line sliding up and down and stuff, because it can slide on the safety pin. But the main difference in a spinnerbait, which this is referred to as a spinnerbait, is this head weighs different amounts. It's basically like a jig on there.
Oh, okay.
For a weight.
Yeah.
So that'll weigh different amounts. This is a 1/2 ounce.
Yep.
And then these blades will change like sizes with the bait, but the big difference is the shape of the blade itself.
Oh.
You might be able to see. I grabbed some of my musky stuff.
Oh yeah,
so it's a little bit easier to see.
And let me explain it too for anybody who's like, let me give a full explanation because we talked about the metal V, but then on either side of like the ends, on the left side or right side, doesn't really matter, but like they're on one side, there's what Tim said, it's like a lead weight, and then it always seems that there's a skirt and a hook.
Yep.
And then on the other side are where what I was calling the spoons, they're called blades.
Right.
And so there's always blades on one side of the metal V, and there's always a weight, a hook, and a skirt on the other side.
Yep. And just for size difference, like this is more of a bass one and this is a musky one. You can see
Oh,
that there's that second hook way back here. There's a hook here and a hook
oh,
here.
yeah, I see that now that you
There's
pointed it
two
out. Yeah, it's
hooks.
a little hard for me
Yeah.
to see, right? But yeah.
Yeah.
So there's
it's kind of
two.
hard.
There are two hooks on,
I wonder if I move
and they're just the J hooks now. Like I don't know a different word for it, but they're not trebles.
Yeah,
like
no,
we
you're
were
right.
just talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good way to put it as J hooks. I don't know what you would typically.
It's a pretty standard, right? It's just like a standard fishing hook. Like
Yep.
that's what.
And this one actually has, it's like a single hook in here.
Okay.
And then there's another hook. This one's like free floating.
Oh,
So this one has feathers
whoa.
and stuff like wrapped onto the hook, but it
Yeah.
has a second hook because this is a really big one for muskies and stuff.
Uh-huh.
But basically, the differences in your blades are going to be the differences in the speed that you can retrieve everything.
What?
So
Really?
these willow blades spin a lot faster, have a lot less resistance. That's a willow blade,
Okay.
where it looks like a big football.
Yeah. And
This
it's a willow
short,
leaf, I would assume, right?
yes,
I'm not
yep,
big on trees.
right, exactly.
I think we've said that
And
before.
yeah, so that's a willow like leaf is what it's named after. The other blades, I don't necessarily know where they come from, but see this other one's like round?
Yeah.
That's called a Colorado blade.
Okay. It's almost just like a
And
drop. Like if you think about like a water drop, really, it's really
yeah,
wide at the
little,
bottom and kind of pointed at the top,
yep. But closer to round.
but really
Because
close to round. Yeah.
yeah, because when you get in between the Colorado and the willow, which I don't have an example of, I mean, it'd be kind of more shaped like this blade,
Okay.
where this one's a little bit.
Yeah, I see
That's
that.
called an Indiana blade.
Oh. Yeah,
So there's
the Colorado was way rounder than that.
yeah. So like this one has two willow blades on it for the bass fishing.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that.
And this, yeah. And that one I can reel a lot faster.
Okay.
Like I can burn that through the water if I want to.
Uh-huh.
Where some days I have some that have just one big ass Colorado blade on it.
Really?
So you can just reel it slow. That big blade moves a lot of water and it has more resistance and you can fish it a lot slower.
Okay.
And if you fish it faster, like there's just a lot more resistance.
Okay.
But those, I mean, it's almost impossible to burn a Colorado blade. Like the resistance is just like you're really cranking it. And
Oh,
the willow
really?
blade just comes through the water easy. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
So those
And
not
then
only it's not necessarily it is, but it isn't, but just hang in there with the story is
yeah,
the shape of the blade is it literally comes down to the hydrodynamics of how fast you can burn it through the water. It's not necessarily technique, so to say.
right.
It's
Yeah.
like almost it is the physical hydrodynamic of the blade that makes your technique different.
Correct. Yep.
That's wild. I would.
And then there's also different variations of like color and stuff. You can see that this one has, it might be hard to kind of see on the thing, but this big one's gold.
Yep.
Little one's silver.
Oh.
So you can get different variations like that. This one's silver on both, but the blades are hammered. So it has a different flash to it.
Yeah, it's got that golf ball indent look on it.
Yep. And then there's other ones that you can buy too that are like this, where you got gold on one side and the other side's painted.
Right.
You know,
Still a bright color, but it's just painted. It's not shiny at all.
That, exactly. And they have that in spinnerbaits and stuff too. So there's a whole world of spinnerbaits. Like that's why it's like, here's a couple of the basics. Go to your local bait shop and look through the spinnerbaits. It's like a whole fucking aisle, dude. It's like the whole thing.
It's its own aisle.
And then you go over into the muskie section and there's like its own section as well, where there's all these different, because there's all these different sizes. I have so much shit, but I only grabbed a couple of them to show everything.
Right.
And then those blades and everything, there's hybrids, everything starts getting on everything else, you know?
Yeah,
And
yeah. We kind of talked about that in our, I think it was our 5 fishing tips. You had sent
yeah,
a hybrid one, and it was like, whoa, whoa, whoa,
I don't
hold
know if
on.
you
That's
can
crazy.
see this one too, but like how we were talking safety pin, that's
Oh,
it.
yeah.
This is literally just a safety pin.
It,
Like, look at that. You
yeah.
fold in half.
You're even bending it like you could close it.
Yeah.
It literally looked like you were going to close the safety pin because it also had the closed tip on it.
Yep. That one has the closed tip.
That was
Yep.
crazy. So let
Yeah.
me ask about the skirt, because you've showed two of them.
Sorry. I got that. You ever seen? There's an SNL skit with Timothy Chalamet. I don't know if I'm saying his last name right, but
Yeah, I think you are.
and then Pete Davidson,
Okay.
and it's like a fake rap, and they're just up there going, skirt,
Skirt.
yeet, skirt,
Yeet.
yeet.
It's the best, dude. It's
Yeah.
so funny.
So when you said
And
skirt, I'm
'cause
just like, skirt.
skirt. Sometimes I just do that, and my wife is like, "What the fuck are you doing?"
Yeah, because
And I'm just like,
it's
"Skirt." You don't get it. You just don't get it. Yeet.
yeet, skirt, yeet.
And the host, it's just so funny. She's at the beginning of it, she's just like, "And we're here with two overconfident white boys."
Skirt that, yeet that.
It was so good.
Oh man, yes, I've done the same. I find myself doing that shit driving the delivery van, and then like looking around, like I get lost in the moment sometimes, and nobody else is. I just look around, like, wonder if anybody just saw me, you know, just yelling to myself, skirt, yeet. Oh, anyway,
Speaking of funny stuff that my wife didn't get, we got to talk about that reel
Yeah.
that you sent me, where they're at the Comic-Con.
Oh,
Yeah, we got to talk about. I got to tell you a story about that. We'll do that after the podcast, dude. That shit made me laugh so fucking
dude.
hard. I didn't even message you back because I was.
Oh hell yeah, dude! Such
Okay.
a good unintentional burn.
Oh.
Stay tuned to the next segment to get into that shit.
So,
all right,
back to spinners quick before we jump off, because you had two,
Yeah.
and this was part of the questions that I had, and I kind of wanted to get the. Hopefully, the listeners got the same questions as me. That big old musky one had feathers for a skirt, and your bass one had, I don't even know what that is, a plastic of some sort. So
Yeah,
obviously
it's
feathers and these
rubber.
plastics are water resistant,
plastic,
but the
yeah.
feathers can't
Right.
really be all that water resistant. I mean, can you talk about that a little bit? Just like
the feathers have more of like kind of a natural flow. So the back has a feather on it, but the rest of this is actually animal hair.
Oh, yeah.
Which animal hair? I'm not quite sure on this one.
Mm-hmm.
This is a Northland. But like, they commonly refer to these inline spinners,
Yeah,
as bucktails because it's deer fur.
Really?
Yeah, so that's
I've
why
definitely
they call
heard
it
bucktails.
bucktail.
I just didn't realize that was it.
Yeah, it's something with like the deer fur. The deer hair is like resistant. It's made to like repel the water.
Yeah, it's
So
super
they use
hydrophobic.
Yeah, so they use deer hair. So you're dealing with like actual animal hair, and this shit is just like bleached and dyed. Like this is real animal hair on here.
Yeah, they just bleached the shit out of it and turned it bright yellow and bright orange.
Right. And so like an inline spinner is, dealing with the kind of same stuff, because when you're talking about a spinner bait, technically there's the safety pin style and the inline style.
Yeah.
So on an inline style, you're dealing with a treble hook inside this fur, and on a musky one, you're dealing with two. There's one down here, and
hanging out of the back of the fur.
Yep.
And then there's one hidden inside the fur.
There's one in there. I don't know if you can kind of see that.
Kinda.
Try to pull the hair there.
Yeah.
So there's one up here, one on the bottom. Normally there's two. In a bigger bait like this, like a Mepps Muskie Killer, will have like a longer midsection here with the hook on the bottom.
Oh, okay.
So this can
Separating
change
itself from the
sizes.
weight. It, like,
Right.
gets the hook
Yep.
back a little bit from the weight.
Yep. So that'll change sizes. The hair can change sizes. There are that bucktail style that have tinsel, even just a
Really?
bunch of flash. Yeah, different.
Huh.
um I don't know if it's Musky Mayhem that makes them, but a very popular one
I'm
is
just
called a
picturing, like, a Christmas
cowgirl.
tree hanging off the back of this
Yeah,
thing.
kind of, dude. That's what it looks like. It's just a bunch of
Weird.
flash. It flails in the water nice, and then it has a lot of flash to that tinsel, so it
Yeah.
attracts them and stuff. So
Right.
it's called a cowgirl, is one of the more um popular ones. And
Okay.
that one, I don't think they make a natural hair in the cowgirl. I think it's all
Like, it's
tinsel, that
literally just
whole
that
line.
flashy stuff?
I think the
Okay.
whole line is that tinsel.
Yeah.
And then you start moving into like double cowgirl has two freaking blades. And this is a number
So,
5,
let's
man. They
pause for a
get
second on the inline spinner. This isn't the V anymore. We're just talking about, like, a line, like, straight
yep,
through from there's
yeah,
an eye, and then there's a weight, and there's
yep.
a spinner, there's a
There's an
blade
eye,
yeah,
yep, and the blade will spin.
around the weight.
Well, yeah, I'm not doing a good job at spin like that,
So the weight kind of
like a
spins
helicopter.
around in front of the weight. The blade spins in
Yep,
front of the weight, and then there's hooks attached just behind the weight.
yep. On the behind the weight is a like O-ring,
And does
and
it
then
always
that
spin in a circle
attaches
like
to
that? Is
hooks.
it always just like a
Yeah,
prop? Just
yep, yep. Those ones spin in a, and this is a really big version, but like Meps makes smaller ones. Shit, I got hooks everywhere, so I'm like picking
so
up
much sticking to
lures
your
with my
hoodie and shit?
sweatshirt.
Oh god.
But it's okay. I'm good. Um, there's smaller ones that I've talked about in like smallmouth episodes where we're talking about fish in the river. The smaller Meps aglia
Mhm.
goes down to like a 2-3 size blade. And those, are awesome for smallmouth and stuff. And that just has one single treble hook on it. A lot of times that has like
Mhm.
I prefer the ones that have like a little bit of natural hair with a red feather, and
Okay.
then that's on the treble hook. This is a number 5. These ones get bigger when the numbers go up. And
Oh,
I've seen
okay.
some of those with like dual number 12s,
What the
dual
fuck,
13s, maybe
dude?
even dual 14s, dude. I
Oh
can't even
my
remember.
god.
Massive. The amount of
Huge.
drag that they put on when you're trying to reel in that shit, because they're a lot of times like that Colorado style too.
Oh, really?
It's just amount of vibration to like, so the muskie feels it.
Okay.
And I've thought to myself, like, I just want to burn this in. And I'm like, I can't fucking move this thing, dude.
You get tired after 3 casts. You're like, "Fucking A."
Yeah. Yeah. You just can't. I mean, it's just like burning it in is like not a possibility.
Oh my god, that's
Yeah.
crazy, dude.
Yeah.
I can't
It's,
imagine how big that gets. That's just nuts to think
it,
about.
it some of those are massive. Like, I mean, this one goes, just past my wrist. I have
Yeah,
some where if I hold it here,
goes like,
they're
oh my god.
getting close to my elbow.
And you're a tall dude. So you got some length on there. It's
And
crazy.
dude, the biggest muskie I ever caught was when it ate like a 2-pound bass I had on, so they can handle it.
Right, right, right. So before we kind of merge into buzzbaits here really quick, because that was the one that I've totally fucked
Yes.
up.
Yep.
Uh, I wanted to ask depth on these things. Like, how do you fish these depth wise? Like the inline spinners, the spinners in general, like they have
Oh,
they have
sure.
weight on them,
Yeah.
but like, how do you fish
Yeah.
it?
So you can burn them on the surface. These inline ones, you can burn them like so they actually are causing kind of like a wake underneath the surface at dusk. That really works well.
Oh, so you
So
get
you
them
can do
just
that.
like inches underneath the water, and it
Yep.
causes a ripple on top
Yeah, pretty much.
without
Yep.
breaking the water.
Exactly.
Oh
Yep.
shit!
Yeah. So a little bit of it's trying to like time it or like really figure out the the speed that you need to go, because if you go too fast, it's going to break the surface and it's not going to work.
Uh,
And if you go too slow, you won't get it to the surface. But too slow is not really a problem. You might not just, it might not do that whole disturbance on the surface.
right. Okay.
You know, but um you can kind of fish anywhere you want in the water column. You just kind of got to count it down, and then you
Hmm.
know practice with it and see how fast you should reel it to try to get it to stay in the same area. If you cast it
Yeah.
out, if you
Uh-huh.
reel faster, it's going to bring it up to the surface as you're reeling faster,
Hmm.
and it will naturally come up to the surface because you're at the surface of the water. So that when it gets closer to you, it starts coming up slowly.
Right.
But if you cast it out and like where you cast it, it's like 15 feet down, just kind of count it, guess on, maybe drop it in the water and take a look,
And watch
see how
how far
fast
it
it
sinks
looks it
in 3
falls.
seconds, and then
Yep. A lot of times it's kind of
Mhm.
like if you're counting like one every time you uh, say 1, 2, 3, that's like a foot. If you kind of get the cadence down, if you kind of see how
Yep.
fast it's falling, you can be like 1, 2, 3, wanting it to get 10 feet down before you start reeling it.
Okay.
You can do that.
And then you
And
just
with a
start reeling
spinner,
it, it'll come in, whether it be inline or a regular spinner. They'll just
yeah,
if you find the right speed, it'll come in at 10 feet until it has to retreat towards you, or it'll be in like a 10 to 10 foot range
right.
as
Yep.
you find
Yep.
that speed.
Yeah. I mean, it'll start picking up a little bit. It'll start coming up as you're reeling it in. But yeah, I mean, general rule of thumb, you're just kind of trying to get it down to where you want to fish it
Mhm.
and then try to keep it there. So that's all you got to do is just reel it in. And then you can give little pauses, reel a little bit, certain times reel a little bit faster and go back to your cadence. Just there's sometimes these irregularities are what trigger a bite.
Oh,
So just as
yeah,
you're reeling,
sure.
just be reeling and then just go, whoop, and then reel again. Just even that little bit reeling and just stop, reel some
And
more.
let it sink a little bit
Because
and then
that bait
come
will
back.
be like spinning and all of a sudden it just stops, kind of falls, and then it moves again.
Mhm.
So it almost looks like it pauses,
Right.
to a fish. It might just be like something behind me. Oh shit, there is, and that's
Yeah.
the fish is just like, ah, damn, it saw me out of its peripherals. I must eat it now. Or,
Right. Yeah.
they're dumb. They swim too deep and don't breathe and then die. Anyways, uh,
Okay.
but I was gonna say,
Oh, yeah.
when you're talking about the different ways to fish it, some of it can get kind of tricky, like on this where the line can move. But
Oh,
these,
yeah.
for bass and stuff, you can actually let it fall too, and it will kind of spin in like a helicopter motion as it goes down.
Oh,
So you can even just like retrieve it and let it fall, and it'll kind of spin on the way down. And you know, there's some different things you can do to it. I know at the beginning we were talking about how we're not going to get into like how you fish everything, but
right,
there's
right.
there's options. So if you want to know how to do some of that stuff, you could definitely check it out. And there's a couple of different videos. I think I can't quote what they are right now off the top of my head, but I think I
Mhm.
have a couple where it's literally like, here's one where they're talking about spinner baits, and they just go to all the pros and just be like, what do you do with spinner baits,
And, like,
and there's stuff you can
everybody has
add
a
to
different
them.
fucking
Right.
way of fishing it.
Exactly. And there's
Yeah.
stuff you can add to them. Some of them, when you're looking in the aisles, if you're looking at the prices and stuff, and you're like, why is that one so much more than that one? Well, different quality components. There's
Sure.
a spinner here, that ball bearing might be a little bit nicer. The metal that they used, it might
Yep.
not. This might be like a coated blade instead of like an actual whatever copper this is
Yep.
for the color.
Yeah.
This one has, you can kind of see on my white background, it's kind of hard, but this one has like a longer skirt right here, a
Mm.
shorter skirt, and then a longer skirt.
Yeah, it has, like, a subskirt almost that's
Yeah,
longer
they
than the
they
outer
don't
skirt.
always. Yeah, exactly. They don't all come with that. Some of
Uh-huh.
them have a stinger hook where there's that extra hook attached to it.
Okay.
You can
Called a
buy
stinger
that.
hook, huh? That extra
Yep.
one?
Yep, that little extra stinger. This one has that stinger built in with the feather and everything wrapped on it with the musky lure. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's
That
a lot
explains
of
a lot.
differences, a lot of different components, a lot of different metals. Terminator, uh, they're rods, the actual metal piece is made out of titanium.
Oh shit!
So there's, yeah, it might be like some sort of a titanium alloy, but there's titanium
Right,
involved
but
because they say it.
the metal part of the spinner bait is made out of titanium. I mean, like,
Yep.
here you go.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
So then, yeah, let's wrap in the buzz bait, because I bought a buzz
Hmm.
bait. I thought I had a spinner
Yeah.
bait when I came to do the visuals, like when I gathered up my lures for the visual aids on this, and I pull out a buzz bait, and I went, "Yep, that's not a spinner," because I knew what a buzz bait was. If you see the short video, if you go
Yeah.
over to if you find us at Real AFTV on YouTube, in the short video, you'll see the buzz bait and all that stuff. There's info in there. So yeah, I pulled out the blade, but I still look at this thing, and mine's a cheap one. I know that. But it's still
Yeah.
a metal
They all
rod.
do the.
It's not a V
Yep.
shape on this particular situation, but it's just a metal rod with a
Right.
weight and a J hook in it. Like I said, I said before, a
Yeah.
J hook, but it's just a regular hook. But the difference
See,
here, instead of a spoon like blade, this thing is literally
yeah.
like a boat prop almost. I mean,
Right. Yeah. Cause I mean, it's made to get the lift and stuff. Hey, hold on.
yeah.
Keep yours held up for a second.
Oh yeah. Okay, here.
I want to point something out. Like lift that whole thing so you can see it. See a big difference in a spinner bait, why it's that V shape,
Yep.
is because these blades are over the hook. When you're
Oh,
fishing it, they're over. So you have to have that space so they can grab it. When you have yours there, that blade is well in front of the hook.
yeah.
So you don't have, it can be closer to the bait, because when they're only grabbing that back piece, because that front piece is keeping the bait on the surface, and that blade is on the surface of the water going plop, 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 plop.
Oh,
And that's a top water bait. And
okay.
that back one, that's where they're gonna hit it. And
Yeah, because
you
the
can put
blade is
different
so far back on this one that,
yeah,
I mean, it's so far forward, I guess, right?
right,
That, yeah, I mean, a bigger fish could grab that hook without any problem.
right.
And the spinner is right over the top, and
Yeah,
that's why the V has the space. I love it.
right. So now I'll tell you this too. I mean, this is getting into a whole new bag of worms with other stuff that you can do. And this is a jig. I'm just going to hold it up for example. But this is a swim jig, but I have this paddle tail, like swim soft plastic on this hook.
Mm-hmm.
You can do that with one of these. You can remove this skirt and put that swim bait on here.
Oh,
You can get
so you
a
could take the
toad.
skirts off of
Skirt.
buzzbaits and
Yes.
spinners?
You can take the skirts off of those. I wouldn't suggest you do that to ones you already have. They have ones that you can buy that don't have the skirt. If it
Okay.
has a skirt on it, I wouldn't pull it off unless you're like in desperation mode. Keep the skirts on the ones that you have skirts on, and buy ones that don't have skirts for certain stuff. There's a KVD sexy toad,
Yep.
I think is
Sexy frog
is
or
the
toad. I have the
was it-
sexy frog.
I think the toad is the spinner.
Gotcha.
The
Yeah. Nope.
frog is
Frog is a
the
frog.
frog is a frog bait,
Okay.
and I think the toad is the spinner.
Yeah.
And the toad is like a soft plastic that has moving legs. And you
Oh.
put that toad on that hook like what you have there.
Okay.
So you have the disturbance of the prop
Of the
on the
buzz bait.
top,
Yeah.
and the toad has the legs kind of swimming on the bottom. So
Oh.
that disturbance and the noise gets their attention, and when they look up, they see that toad fluttering, and they
Yep.
come up and they smash that toad. So
Oh,
there's
dude.
different kinds. You caught that one booyah buzz bait. That booyah buzz bait, when you look, what the fish sees when it looks up, it has a little. It almost looks like two little eyeballs looking down at it. It's like a little face on the
Uh-huh.
weight itself, and the
Yeah.
weight is kind of like a triangle shape almost. It's a little bit different than the weight you have there.
Yep.
And that one has a skirt. But you can do a bunch of different stuff, man. You can put all sorts of stuff on there. And when it comes to these spinner baits too, there's smaller ones for smaller fish. Again, when I was talking about that Johnson minnow, there's some of the originators have been going back from a long time. They have one that's called a beetle spin, and that has a soft plastic on it that kind of looks like a bug, some sort of a grasshopper or whatever.
Okay.
And like a little safety pin style where there's just a tiny little Colorado blade on that, and it's just a blade with that little. It's almost or like a regular jig that's on the back of that.
Okay.
Northland has the Mimic Minnow. They have a Mimic Minnow that has that spinner blade on. You can literally buy a pack of those spinners and put it on any jig you have. Like
Oh,
that's
what?
more of a jig. Like, well,
Well,
I don't think I necessarily have any right now because I only grabbed like a Ned rig to kind of show what that was. But this kind of jig is
yeah,
a
that.
Ned rig where the jig head's pretty small,
Yep.
but essentially like a more rounded one that's not this not hydrodynamic because this
Hmm.
one's made to sit
Flat
like
on the
I'm trying
earth,
to,
basically.
yeah, see how it just kind of sits
Oh yeah, yeah. It's
up.
just balancing on top of your hand. Like
Yeah.
it's just sitting on top of your hand, not even balancing.
Yeah, yeah. So that one's not designed to do that, but you could just take this, you hook that one side here, and then it comes out and goes up, and then you have a spinner on that. You can do it to any jig you have.
Wow.
Yeah.
Really?
So the spinner bait, there's a lot of different variations, a lot of stuff you can do, a lot of things you can
Yeah.
play around with.
Holy shit. Well, on
Yeah.
that note, okay, so just total transparency here on the podcast of like a little behind the scenes production stuff. It's like on the list right now are jigs and crankbaits.
Yeah.
We need to start wrapping up this topic
Uh-huh. Yeah.
uh, before it just turns into a full 2 hours by itself. But that's why, since you just had the jig up and we
Yeah.
just kind of you just kind of went on a rant of like, okay, spinner baits are nuts. We talked about buzzbait, which almost is a variation of a spinner bait, even. And then you went into all these variations of spinner baits that are just jigs with spinners on them. I'm going, oh my
Yeah.
God. I
Yep.
didn't think the spinner bait was going to take up half this topic. So I'm wildly misjudged because now the two jig and crankbait that are left, I'm like,
Yeah.
these were the broadest two. And that's why I had them at the bottom because I knew that no matter what, we could get those to last an hour. But now I'm going, dude, are those individually their own topic? Can we squeeze?
This
We can't squeeze them in here in the next 5-10 minutes.
Oh no, we're not gonna be able to because I'll just show you real quick. Like, stay tuned for a later episode because we got jigs, like I said here, where this is like a Ned rig. This is just like this would be for a Ned rig. This isn't a Ned rig. This is just a jig head for a Ned rig,
I don't even know
referred
what a
to
Ned
as
rig is, but
a
that's
Ned
fine.
head.
Keep going.
Oh, dude,
I know. Keep
we'll
going.
have to get it. We'll have to get into rigs a different time. The rigs is a whole different situation
Oh my
because
God.
I can take
Okay.
one jig head and we can turn it all. The rigs are different. Yeah, there's so many different rigs because it only takes a slight variation of what you change or how you hook the bait up before it becomes a completely different rig.
Oh my God.
So, anyways, this
Okay.
is a jig head. This one is just a jig head by itself. There are different variations of this. This one's shaped kind of like a little mushroom head. You turn it upside down, looks like a little mushroom.
Mm-hmm.
That
But it's
one
got a
is
hook.
called.
It's
got a hook.
It's a hook.
It's got a hook. Yeah, it's like a mushroom umbrella.
Yeah. There you go.
So that's
Perfect.
the Ned one. So like, obviously we're gonna talk about this more, but I was gonna say like, here's like a big skirted jig, right?
Yeah.
We're just gonna we're gonna get into some layers. Skirted jig has the brush guard right here. This one's not made to bounce on the bottom because it's a swimming jig. What's on the bottom? A blade.
Whoa.
There's a
What?
blade. There's an underspin on this guy.
What the heck?
So you can that's what I'm talking about, hybrids. You start mixing everything together.
Right.
There's a blade on this jig head. So that's a swimming, and then we put the soft plastic on there. This one you can just cast out and retrieve. This thing's kind of spinning and flashing underneath this with the skirt, and this is swimming, and it's just kind of.
And a jig in its
stuff.
broadest term, just a quick, is just like, it's just a weight connected to a regular ass hook.
Yeah, a weight connected to a hook.
And that's
it's like where you would tie the line onto the hook. There's just a piece of lead.
Yep. And it has a hook stuck in it.
In its most general sense. Now you get into all the different shapes and colors and all that other good stuff.
Which is why it has to be spun off, because otherwise we're just going to keep going, right?
Yeah. I should say too,
can't believe
because
that thing you
I
pull.
want to go back to the spinnerbait because I forgot to talk about it.
What's that?
This is from Straight On with that safety pin style.
Mm-hmm.
The inline spinners are not this, so do not get it twisted. But inline spinners and buzz baits are great weedless options. The
Oh.
way they are designed, this is almost like a weed guard itself because of how that's set up. Like the hook is in line with that metal.
Oh.
So it's just deflecting stuff.
It's deflecting.
You can cast these spinner baits like in super thick cover, it's not going to work, but like in reeds and stuff, like the bull rush, the straight stick up,
Yep.
you know, I don't know how to explain it really good. A lot of people think it's wild rice. It's not all wild rice. But you can cast that shit into those and most of the time retrieve it without getting hung up. It'll
Wow.
just deflect
Okay.
straight off of them. You can cast these spinner baits around docks and have it bank off the pole and actually like trigger bites when you have it contact the cover. If there's a rock, if there's a dock pole or whatever, it'll bounce off that pole and it'll create, you know, whatever. It might knock some algae off and have a little plume or whatever, but
Mm-hmm.
any of those irregularities can trigger bites. So I just wanted to go back to that because I forgot to say it. Those are great weedless options. The safety pins, the buzz baits, those all work awesome for weedless stuff.
Nice.
Yeah.
I never would have thought of that, but yeah, it could make sense.
Yeah.
Makes total sense when you say it like that.
Yeah. So the jigs, you got the skirted jigs where this is just a straight up skirted jig. This one's still in the box. That's a Berkeley. Weights here. This is a weed guard. So it's like it's I don't even know. It's like a coated metal.
Okay.
I think it's just like
it's got like a
metal
stick coming out of the lead that
it's
is
like
like at a 45-degree angle. There's almost like just a stick stuck at a 45-degree angle in the lead head, and and it's just supposed to deflect weeds.
Yep, and that's just deflecting the cover off of the hook, and the hook's back there, and you have this skirt, and this is a Berkeley one, and it says right on here on the Berkeley one that it's a silicone skirt. So I don't know if
there you go.
They're probably not all silicone, but this one is.
Right.
So
right. Yeah. So there's different materials like we were talking about.
Those are all the different jigs. We can get into all those. And then real fast as far as crankbaits go, which jerk bait could be its own bait altogether. But you have lipped crankbaits. That's a DT10 right there. As a Rapala, super popular one. Lipless crankbaits, its own thing. Doesn't have a lip. Vibrates back and forth. Jerk baits, long, has a bill on it still, but you fish it completely different. I mean, tune into a different episode.
And you'd still call it a crank. Like
you can still
fits in the category.
It fishes just like a crank. It'll work if you just cast it out and reel it in. But the jerk bait is designed to be fished different. Depending on the jerk bait.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So we're definitely I'm gonna cut those from the dock. We're gonna do version 2 or 3 or 4, or crankbaits might end up their own fucking thing. Who knows? Who knows at this point, knowing what we did, that since this is the first one we've done, I'm gonna peel the jigs and cranks off. That was very, very quick, high level. So that way we don't go, hour and a half on just one topic.
That's what I'm trying.
We're definitely, I love that you touched on
tuned.
Them. Yeah, exactly. That was the perfect teaser for the next time that we do this. Because that was this the highest level, and we didn't even go into visual descriptions because you were like, here it is. And so if you want to see what they are and you're not sure what they are, go over to YouTube, know that we're going to come back to these, and
sure.
See what Tim was talking about exactly by having the visual. But we're gonna touch back on them on a different podcast. Right now, we gotta cut this fishing topic off. We're gonna move into the random take, which is AAA gaming. That's what I'm calling it. I'm calling AAA gaming. We've been playing big games. I've been playing God of War. I've been playing Sonic Frontiers. You've been playing Pokemon. I know you want to sound off on it. We're gonna go into the break and talk about that. That was my video game sound effect. I don't know.
Dude, I was like, what
the hell was that? It's an alien takeover. We're going to go into the random take, talking about video games. That was a great hopefully super informative topic. So if you know anybody, if you're already good and up on this stuff and you know anybody who's trying to learn, send the Real AF TV podcast their way and say, hey, I think you should check these guys out. All right, Tim, let's take a break and come back, talk about some big name video games.
Big.